recording. But anything you say that you want me to take out after, just let me know.
Yeah, for sure.
That's totally cool.
Okay.
And
I trust you not to give me the villain edit, so.
that's so funny. I won't give you the. My other people maybe, but not you. No, just kidding. So, M,
Yeah.
what is your first name, your derby or skater name, your pronouns, and how long were you with ORD?
My name is M. My pronouns are they, them. My official derby name, I guess, was Lady Macbeth, but I also unofficially went by Daddy Bong Legs. And I skated with ORD. I started in early 2019 and I left in 2023, I think, late, like right at the end of the year of 2023.
And what was your role when you left?
When I left, I was a coach, and I had spent some time as well as the sort of person in charge of our crash course program.
And can you talk to me about your journey through ORD, like how you started and what that was like?
Yeah. So I started in 2019. I took crash course. At the time, we were skating at this like warehouse venue in Hull. The floor was so sticky and slow. And I had kind of always wanted to try derby because I saw Whippet in high school and it was formative. It was foundational to my, as you know, as with most young queer people, it was kind of foundational to my identity. And yeah, I was an adult and I had money, so I went out and bought all the things I needed, and I took crash course in 2019 and I had a really good experience. And yeah, I joined the league, which I kind of had not ever anticipated that I would do. I think I thought I would just learn how to skate and then go about my business. But yeah, that was sort of my beginnings. And so yeah, I joined the league and I was in level 1 of ORD. So like, you know, no contact, individual skills. I think I was in level 1 for like 2 or 3 years. Because of course like COVID interrupted things a bit, but also I was just kind of going at my own pace.
Okay, can you talk about like how that went for you, being in level 1 for 2 to 3 years? Like, were you okay with that, or what were some of the obstacles?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I was okay with that. I think at the time, I didn't really expect to be like any good. So I wasn't really surprised that I was progressing a little more slowly. Also at that time, that was like a little bit more common in ORD because it was a little more common to have people join the league who had never skated before or really done anything like it. And then post COVID, right, when we restarted Crash Course, it was a really different situation because we had a lot of people who had, you know, roller skating was kind of popular on social media in 2020. And we had a lot of people who had skated before, had at least some experience. So we had a lot of people coming in who had a little more experience and a little more aptitude. But yeah, in 2019, when I joined, it was a lot more common for people to really kind of like have a bit of a slower journey. So I didn't really mind. And at the time, I had a lot of people in level 1 with me who, you know, we had formed friendships and we were just kind of fucking around and having fun. So yeah, it didn't bother me too much.
And what was your experience as a fat person in derby?
Yeah, I feel like derby is like one of the few sports where you can sort of like expect to see fat people. So in that way, I had a lot less self-consciousness than I have had in other kind of athletic environments. I played rugby in high school, I think for similar reasons. It's one of a contact sport is generally a place where you can expect to find some fat people. So that was okay in that regard, but definitely there were times where I felt like maybe like the some of the coaching strategies and kind of feedback that was given wasn't really like accounting for the kind of experiences of people with different sized bodies. Things like learning how to do crossovers, right?
Hmm.
Stuff like that. It can get a bit frustrating to have something demonstrated over and over again by a thin person who's been skating for over 10 years. So it comes really naturally to them. When you are a fat person who is really new to skating and doesn't have like any real athletic aptitude. So yeah, there were definitely some ups and downs in that regard. Also, sometimes it's hard. I was excited going into this kind of environment where you're expecting to see fat people, and I think I had a kind of expectation that that meant that everybody in that environment would be, you know, body positive or something of that ilk, which definitely isn't true, right? There was still a lot of from other skaters, like a lot of diet talk and kind of like talking down about their own bodies. And that really does impact the people around you. So I definitely think there were some times where I was sort of kind of, I think it surprised me to kind of experience that. But yeah, otherwise, I think in general, it was definitely more positive than most kind of experiences I've had with sport and working out, but still a mixed bag. Yeah.
I've got to say that as a fat person, when I joined Crash Course, and very out of shape, and knee falls were like the death of me because trying to get up off the ground with wheels on your feet as a fat person is really
It
hard.
is so difficult.
So difficult. But then you were the coach for the Crash Course, and that was just I was just so inspired, and I was like, okay, so I'm like, and then you had the whole story about how it took you so long, like you've been in the league for a long time, and it was okay to take your time,
Yeah.
and that was like that kind of motivated me to join because I was like, okay, well, M is clearly a badass, so like I want to be a badass like M, but that was
Wow.
really nice.
That's so wonderful.
And you mentioned being queer earlier. Do you want to talk about Derby as a place for queer and like non-binary
Yeah,
trans folks?
for sure. Yeah, I mean, again, I think derby is like the kind of sport where, again, a lot like rugby, you expect to see queer people, right? It's kind of part of the culture of the sport, I think, this attitude of like, it's very accepting and it's a place for misfits, right? I think we talk about that a lot in derby. And in general, I would say that that's definitely true, right? There's going to be a place for you, right, in derby, which felt really kind of wonderful at the time. I do think so. When I started, actually, I don't know if you know this, but when I joined the league, I hadn't come out yet. Like,
Yeah.
so at the time I was like, I'm still a girl. So I remember when I did come out, kind of to the rest of my friends and family, which I think was in 2021, and then we were just starting to get back to in person practices for ORD. So I was like, okay, well now I have to like come out to like everyone in the league as well. I wasn't nervous about it. I've never really been too nervous about that aspect of coming out, right? Like you get it or you don't. You accept me or you don't. It's more just like I'm giving you information to be able to refer to me correctly, right? So there was definitely some, I think there's some sort of struggle and hiccups along the way because there are a lot of people who are associated with derby who've been with the sport for a really long time who do think of it as like a women's sport,
Mhm.
right? um so there's a lot of like ladies and girl power and like that kind of rhetoric, and it can be really hard for people to change their language. But it's not malicious in any way. It's just kind of habit, right? So yeah, again, it's sort of a mixed bag, but in general it was again a much more positive and receptive environment than most other kind of sport and athletic spaces, which feels really good, right? It's nice to come to a place where yeah, maybe not everyone is always going to get your pronouns right 100% of the time, but there isn't any tolerance for like homophobia or transphobia or that kind of um active like negative,
Mhm.
you know, mental space for that. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it does feel good to sort of know that even if people are going to make mistakes, there are good intentions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, and do you want to talk about your time coaching? Like, do you have any highlights, or how did you get into coaching?
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
um I felt really like honored when I was like invited to coach. I think that was in 2021. We were coming back from, we hadn't practiced for a long time because of COVID. And I sort of was, I've been always kind of a casual player of derby. I liked the community and getting together with people and having a sort of set time where I was going to do physical activity. That kind of routine matters to me. But I was never really like married to playing a game necessarily or winning a game. I've played a couple like low contact and no contact scrimmages and they were fun, but I never really felt like that was super important to me. But I really love to introduce people to the sport. And so I was helping out with Crash Course, which Ven was coaching, and she kind of invited me to sort of take the opportunity to basically coach that crash course, and Ven would also be there to offer support. Um, and it just was really, it's so fulfilling, especially coaching crash courses. It was always one of my favorite things to do. It's really wonderful to see, right? It's 7 weeks. It's not a long time, but people grow so much over that really short period. And most people aren't like skating outside of crash course, right? There, it's just that hour. I mean, when I took crash course, it was only an hour. Now I think it's an hour and a half, right? It's an hour and a half of time. And everybody is so supportive of each other. Like all the skaters are supportive of each other. It's just a really fun environment. And I sort of really I took a lot of pleasure in that role of being the kind of person to who introduced people to this sport, because I know that it changes a lot of people's lives, right? I mean, I know for me, like I don't play derby anymore, but at the time when I was playing it, and especially when I first joined, like you kind of like learn what you're capable of. I think for a lot of people for the first time, a lot of us are kind of discouraged or feel like sports aren't for me, right? Like you have this kind of image of yourself that may or may not really be true, right? That you're like, I don't belong here. It feels so good to show people that they're wrong, right? It was wonderful. I loved it. And yeah, I mean, coaching like a level or a league practice, it's always a blast, right? Because I mean, I love, for me, I was like, it's a performance, right? I have an audience, I get to perform. And that's always fun for me. And, you know, my real life job, I'm a technical writer and an instructional designer. So my job is to teach people stuff, teach people how to do things. So it felt like a really good fit for me.
And you have a very dry sense of humor, and you were hilarious whenever you would coach. Like, very funny.
I wanted it to be fun and I wanted people to feel like, sure, I know people talk a lot about like, oh, growth happens outside of your comfort zone and like all these types of things. And that's true to a great degree, but I wanted people to feel comfortable, and feel like, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. You're going to, right? And that's fine. We all do. And it's okay, yeah, to take your time, right? You don't have to, as a coach, I'm like, I don't care if you give 110%. I'm just happy that you're here. That's all that matters to me, right?
And you want to talk about what led to your decision to leave derby and coaching?
Sure, yeah. It was not an easy decision to make, to be honest. I had a period of time where I was going to practice less and less, and it was starting to feel kind of like an obligation and not necessarily like something that I was really excited about. So when I was thinking about that, I sort of had a moment where I thought, oh, I have to fix my headspace, right? I have to improve my attitude, and this is a me problem. But I was really cognizant of the fact that, like, when I was coming to practice, I was not bringing my best self to practice, which is kind of a bummer for the people who love coming and are really looking forward to it all week. And then I show up and I'm like in a shit mood because I kind of didn't want to come, but I felt like I had to. So I was thinking about it in that lens as well. I was like, it's not really fair to my teammates and to the coaches, right? For me to be always showing up and being like salty because I kind of didn't want to come. Um, and I think there were a lot of people, like a lot of coaches and other skaters, who really kind of encouraged me to stick it out, right? And I appreciate them and that kind of perspective that they were bringing. I think they were sort of like, we all get burned out sometimes, and it's temporary, right? But for me, I, have come to acknowledge that I'm the kind of person who things are fun for me until they're not, right? And I used to be really bothered by that I didn't have any, I don't know, like I couldn't stick to it, right? I couldn't commit. Um, but now that I'm older and I understand myself more, I think I just realized that that's just how I am, right? I can enjoy something until it's not enjoyable anymore. And yeah, I really weighed the pros and cons. I asked myself, how much fun am I having versus how much fun am I not having? Um, and if the fun isn't outweighing the bad stuff, then it's kind of time to go. But it was really difficult to make that choice. A couple other things happened in my life too, I think, around the time that I was thinking about it. There was some drama with the league, which definitely kind of contributed to that. And also, my grandmother passed away in October of last year, and I was like, I'm taking some time off from coaching because I just had a lot of family stuff to deal with. And I had a kind of moment where I decided that I was going to take leave as a skater and also take a break from coaching. And I was just going to mentally pretend like I had quit, like I wasn't ever going back, and just see how it felt. And it felt so good. It felt really good. I felt like I had a lot more energy and a lot more free time. I'm kind of a low energy person and I need a lot of time to myself. And 5+ hours of derby practice a week doesn't really for me, I didn't have enough space to also do all the other things I wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
and see my friends and have time for myself. So for me, it was the right decision. But so I'll never say never, right? Sometimes you come back to things that you put down. So there's always a possibility. But for now, I'm kind of really enjoying my journey outside of Derby.
And what made it difficult? You said it was a difficult decision. Like, what part of it exactly was difficult to let it
Yeah,
go?
it's a great community. It's really hard to let that go, right? Because yeah, the thing I always liked about Derby was just like getting to skate with my friends, and not having that kind of guarantee, right? In my week, every week I'm going to get to skate with my friends. That's tough. That's a really difficult thing to say goodbye to. And it's a really difficult thing to move on from something that's just been a really big part of your life for so many years.
And as far as your friends go, have you kept in touch with people from the league, like your
Yeah.
friends? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like I have quite a few people that I'm still close with, and I love to, now that it's bout season, I love to come to a game when I can. It's really great to see my friends play derby, right? And sort of stay connected to that community and stay connected to my friends. So yeah, it's not like you lose your friends. It just, it does change things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And you are keeping busy though. So what are
Yes.
you doing now? This super cool thing that you're doing.
Yeah, so I moved on to a different expensive niche hobby, although this one's actually not as expensive as it could be. So yeah, I started a little over a year ago. I started doing aerial hoop, um, and again, it was another thing a lot like Derby, where it was something I've always wanted to try. And I just had the opportunity to give it a try. I had a friend who had been in the class for about 4 weeks before I joined, and she was having a really fun experience. And I was like, why not? I'll give it a try. And again, much like Derby, my progress has been quite slow. But I'm just going at my own pace and I'm having a lot of fun. And again, it's another kind of space where there's a really great community of really supportive people. There's a lot of parallels, as much as like, it's not a full contact team sport. I am instead hanging from the ceiling, but you know, I'm really having a lot of fun with it.
Do you miss the full contact?
I definitely do. Yeah, I have a kind of history of playing a lot of, if not full contact, then like just kind of hardcore sports that I didn't understand to be dangerous until I like had a little perspective on them as an adult. So it's definitely like very much part of me. But I also think there's something about hoop that really feeds this. As a teen and as a kid, I always kind of felt like I'd missed out a bit because I was never like in dance. I took like the mandatory like ballet class that we all take when we're like 5, right? Because it's good for your coordination or development or something. But my mom was really not into to the dance environment, so I never really like got to continue with that. And I love, that kind of yeah, like a sport that has a really strong like aesthetic quality to it. Um, that's kind of about like grace and beauty, which are, again, are like sometimes things that I think people don't expect from fat people. So it's really fun to be able to kind of access that. Yeah.
And you started park skating too. Can you talk to me a little bit about
Yes.
that?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it's all thanks to you. I never would have been park skating if you hadn't started, right? Yeah, I think I just thought that I don't know, I thought it was like too scary. But yeah, I haven't park skated a lot, but every time I've gone, I've had such a blast. Again, everybody's so nice and welcoming. Um, it's really just like fun and relaxed. Everybody kind of approaches it from their own perspective and, in their own way. And there isn't any sort of pressure to kind of, nail a big trick or like do something that really scares you. But when you do something that really scares you, everyone cheers you on. Yeah, it's also really fun. I used to downhill ski as a kid. So there's something about just like pointing yourself straight down an incline that kind of makes sense to me. Yeah, it was really fun, but I never would have done it if you hadn't, you know, been park skating and been filming and posting, especially like the parts that were not so glamorous, right? Because you always just see people park skating and they're just like they're so good, right? And you don't get to see the part where they were like really scared, or where it was really bad for like a really long time. And it kind of makes you be like, oh well, you were just immediately good at it, and I don't think I will be, so I'm not going to bother.
I mean, you kind of were good at it, like right away. Like I'm not bitter or anything.
I mean,
and I'm gonna post a video.
I'm not like amazing at it, but like
no,
it's fun though.
But
like,
you picked it up pretty quickly. Just saying. Yeah, that's what you definitely need to come out again soon.
I would love to. Yeah, I've been missing it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything else to ask, but as far as earlier you said something about people having a lot of opinions about your coaching. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah.
Not your coaching, but in general.
In general.
Yeah.
I mean, in every organization that kind of thrives off of volunteers giving their time, there's going to be a kind of situation where there's a sort of like 15% of people who are doing 90% of the work is sort of how it tends to be. And that's okay. That's life, right? But a lot of the time I do think it creates a kind of situation where people have, a lot of opinions about how you are giving your time and energy, and to some degree expertise. I mean, I was never an expert skater or derby player, and I never pretended to be. But it can be a bit challenging to feel like you're giving so much. And then have, a lot of people sort of have the reaction of, well, I don't like the way you're doing that. Or I think you should do it differently. Um, and my sort of response has always been, well, why don't you go ahead? Right. But I definitely understand why it burns a lot of people out, right? And if people feel like they're giving a lot and it's not being appreciated. I was really grateful to. There were very few times where I felt like my effort wasn't appreciated by skaters, and I feel really blessed by that, right? But yeah, I understand that for other people, it sometimes it feels like the criticism is so loud, and I think a lot of the time I know I'm definitely guilty of this. If we have somebody who's volunteering and giving so much of their time and energy to something, sometimes we just forget to thank them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we just kind of take it as a given. I know a lot of the coaches who coached me when I first started playing, were still coaching when I left the league, and I think that kind of longevity, people assume that they're always going to be around, and I think you take it for granted a little bit.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Is there anything I haven't asked you that you would like to add?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
I guess I'll just say what I what I always say when people would ask me about Derby, because it was something I always wanted to do, which is like if there's something you've always wanted to do, you should just try it. It might change your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.